Hey Will, it's Dennis from the Australian Rock Show. How are you?
Good, mate. How are you doing?
Pretty well, pretty well. Will, we have got you on the phone today to talk a little about the recent single, which is titled Down Devil's Highway. Can I assume it was penned during a lockdown period?
It was, yes. Yeah, so we basically had plenty of time up our sleeve to write some more tracks. We already had some tracks picked out that we were going to put on the album, but we found that we were coming up with better stuff just over, every time we got together when we could get together. So we rehashed a few things and we rewrote some new stuff, and that's one of the ones that came out of it.
Okay, and Black Whiskey quite recently did a couple of gigs in Sydney at the Bridge Hotel and Frankie's. How were those shows? Obviously, good fun to great to play live again.
Oh, mate, we've been wanting to not only play live. I mean, I think the Frankie's show was pushed back. I think that was like the third time it had been reshown. I know it was supposed to happen. I think the second time was like December last year, and of course that didn't happen. So we sort of said, well, hey, how about we'll push it through till sometime in February and we'll see how that pans out. Because we knew at some point in time this year the place was going to close its doors. And we really did want to play Frankie's before it closed. So we opted to go down last weekend and it went off. Frankie's was an incredible venue. We've been there before as punters. Actually, last time we were down there, we played the Bridge and then went to Frankie's afterwards for a bit of food and see what it was like. And we just went, we've got to try and play this place. It's just fantastic. And it was a big night. And then we did the Bridge on Sunday night, which was great too. The crowd was a little bit smaller. I think people are still very COVID hesitant at the time, but now things have started to open up a bit more. Hopefully that the crowds and the venues will start to pick up in a short period of time.
What's the scene like in Brisbane these days? Are there still many venues to play live?
Right, there's quite a few, but they're not like it used to be. I mean, there's lots of little small, like nooks in the wall type thing that are around, mainly around the valley now. The Brisbane City precinct, so to speak, as it used to be back in the old days, but back in the day, there are a lot more venues for live bands in Brisbane, in the city itself, in the CBD. But now it seems a lot of it's all migrated to the valley and around the Valley Mall area and Brunswick Street and that. So there are places to play. We've got one booked for June. But apart from that, we're just sort of taking our time. We're looking at coming back down south with our touring company, Hard Life Touring Australia. We're trying to tee up some dates to get out and do a bit more outside of the Sydney CBD. So you might see us back down there again in the not too distant future.
Cool. And I do note that there was an Iron Maiden's support coming up, but that's since been rescheduled once again. And yeah. I do recall the band open up for, just from memory, both Striper and Faster Pussycat in recent times as well. Good memories of those shows, Will?
The Striper show, to be honest, was our first gig with the band that we have now. The lineup is as it is, and it's staying as it is. 6 weeks into us getting together, we scored the Striper support at the Triffid. Huge crowd. Obviously, this was pre-COVID, and it just went. For us, it went flawlessly. We got great reviews. People loved it. At the end of the set, everyone was going off. So, and that's what we wanted to please the crowd, to please the people that put the show on. And we just said, hey, let's keep going. And then next thing, not too long after that, I think it was maybe 6 months, maybe a bit longer, we were opening for Faster Pussycat at a venue that's now defunct called the Crowbar, which I know there's one, I think still one in Sydney operating, but the Brisbane one's closed. Great venue. And that went off too. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, Faster Pussycat used our backline, so that was pretty cool. But no, great memories of those, and we just want to keep building on those memories. We want to get out there, and I know that the crowds in Sydney, which obviously we're very new, if not brand new, to a lot of the people that saw us on the weekend and have in the past. We want to build on that, because at the end of the night, they were like, they had a great time. They said, these guys are great. Please come back. We said, if you want us back, we'll come back. And it's just building on those. And now that we're working with Hard Life Touring Australia, who are based in Sydney, we're hoping to sort of fan out a little bit more in the southern states and build on that.
It's good stuff. And before we move away, we just spoke about Faster Pussycat. I should give a shout out to friend of the show and former Sydney boy Ronnie Simmons, who is now playing guitar in Faster Pussycat, which is a pretty cool gig to land.
I did see that, yeah.
Mate, before we get on to the music, can you give me a little band history? I guess how and when did Black Whiskey form? And, well, you've been on the scene sometime yourself, haven't you?
I'm like the granddaddy of the band. I hate to use that term, but I have been around probably the longest because I'm the oldest. I started in a band probably in the mid-'80s. I think we kicked off full on up here in Brisbane in a band called Vice with a schoolmate. Actually, we all sort of grew up in the area. Our drummer was in my sister's class below us, and the guitarist who I've known since I was 6, Dave, and Pete, the singer, who was from Everton Park. So we were all sort of in the same area. Pete was in another band. We had another band going, and we sort of split those two and put it together and made a band. And I think not long after that, we were playing some really well-received shows. Back in obviously, you're talking mid-'80s, glam rock.
Well, as you know, you and I are pretty much the same vintage, and I'm definitely aware of Vice growing up and raised on the Sydney heavy metal scene. And I know I can't recall if I saw Vice when they played Sydney, but definitely, you know, you were getting mentions in the local street press, and on the street and other magazines back then.
So this big show, I remember going to play in Sydney. I know it was Easter weekend, 1985.
Salinas.
There was a show on at Salinas, and it was huge. I think there was a band from each state. It was called the Metal Crusade.
Yep.
And we opened, because obviously we're the youngest and the newest band, we opened that show, and it was just, I went, wow, this is really cool.
That's right. Funnily enough, and it's all connected. I had Phil Bowley, who's been in a host of bands. He was in Shy Thunder. I had him on, went through some of his history just before Christmas, and we did speak about that Metal Crusade gig. So it's good to get your perspective. So that was a well attended gig from memory for yourselves. A great night.
I still got a few photos, not a lot, but I still have a couple. And urban legend has it that the video of the show is still out there. So if anyone's got a copy of it, let me know, because I've never seen it since we went to the promoter's house the next morning, and that was it. Never saw it again.
Wow, it's good stuff. So what about the formation of Black Whiskey?
Black Whiskey is sort of a project that Al, our singer, had going for a while with, obviously a few lineup changes, sort of revolving door type thing with different guitarists and different drummers and that. And I joined the band a couple of years ago. We did a few gigs. Actually, my first gig, the first time around, was at the Zoo with Al and the boys, and then I left. I mainly left because at the time they were all practicing on the deep south side of Brisbane towards the Gold Coast, and I was living right up at Bribie Island, so it was a 2-hour each way to get to rehearsal, and it just sort of became sort of a financial burden as well as the travelling and all that, because you had toll tunnels and all that to use to get there on time. So I just said, look, I've got to opt out. Alan kept on with a lineup that he'd sort of put together, and then it sort of didn't work out. And I wasn't doing anything at the time. I was in a band for a brief period with Doug, who was the drummer of at the time he was also the drummer of Axiom back in the day, Doug Lavery. So I opted out of music for a bit. Next thing I'm thinking about, I wouldn't mind getting back into it. And lo and behold, the next day I got a phone call from Al. He said, "Do you want to do something?" I said, "Well, let's keep Black Whiskey going, but let's put a lineup together that we're going to be happy with." And we did. I'd moved, me and the missus had moved in the meantime from Bribie sort of more down to the northern suburbs, which is where we are now. So it made things a lot easier to commute. And we've just built on that. We've got Dan, who's originally from England. We all have the same sort of musical influences. He's right into like the bands like Sin Lizzy and Iron Maiden and some of the earlier hard rock stuff, and our drummer Mark, we're all into the same thing. So we sort of gel, not just playing songs, but we just gel as a unit. Like we'll have barbecues, we'll go over to have drinks, just hang out as mates, which really helps the lineup, sort of stick together. And it's been that way ever since, I think it was like late 2018. when we got this one to go. And we've just sort of tried to forge ahead. And so far we've been fairly successful at it. We're hoping to maybe step up a rung or two with some more bigger shows down south. The southern states seem to have bigger crowds down there. So
well, you just mentioned the word successful. And I guess if Spotify can be used as somewhat as a gauge, the song you released a while back, Wild and Free, from the Rebel EP, with nearly 70,000 plays, is by far the band's most popular track. That's got to be pleasing to have, material reach so many years.
Absolutely. It's a bit surreal because we're like, okay, we're a Brisbane band. We enjoy what we do. We take it seriously. And that was actually something that before we actually signed to a label, we'd released that song and it did really well. We got, wow, so this was pretty cool. I know we got a lot of airplay on one of the stations down there, Australian Radio India, if I can mention the name. And we're sitting there listening to it on the radio. Hey, that's our song. That's really cool. And this was it had been out for a little while. And he said that it was the most requested song in the history of the station. I went, wow, that's cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we're like, let's see if we can do it again. And we just keep going. We were lucky enough to work with a great team in the States as far as production and then mastering goes. I'll give a shout out to Michael James, who did all the mixing on Wild and Free. He said, that's really cool. We worked with him, and Dave Donnelly was our mastering guy. And these guys have worked with everyone from like Motley Crue, L7, Hole, a lot of big names. And they said, yeah, okay, we'll work with you guys and see what happens with it. And they ended up with a number one song. One of the pleasing things, and a lot of people don't know, that song was actually released. And when it went to air on a station in Detroit, it was in the charts for a couple of weeks, and we're thinking, yeah, it's not too bad. It's got a name out there. And we looked at their chart, and the chart was from August. And I think, hang on a minute, it's gone number one. And I looked back to the previous week, and I went, we just knocked Alice Cooper off the number one spot in his hometown. I went, wow, that's pretty cool.
That's for Wild and Free, correct?
That's for Wild and Free, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, that song's been good to us. And it seems to be a pretty catchy tune. Everyone that's sort of heard it and come to see us when we get to play know the chorus and they'll sing along, and it's just one of those upbeat, fun songs. And
it's interesting. It's interesting which songs resonate with music fans. You never really know what's going to hit, do you?
It's true. I mean, you could write something that you think, hey, that's really catchy. It's got a hook in it. People are going to like it, and it's just a passé track. So yeah, it is. It's a real gamble, but you just got to keep doing what you love doing, and it is what it is with music. So hopefully, when we did Sydney last weekend, we did play some new tracks. We played obviously the new single, Down Devil's Highway, went down really well, and it's a few other tracks on the upcoming album, and they're all well received. And we thought, well, that's pretty cool. So we'll just keep playing them, and we'll get the album out when the time comes. It'll do all right.
So what can you tell us about the album, which is obviously due out sometime this year, correct?
It is due out this year. We're holding off a little bit. What we want to do, and what every band obviously loves to do, is when you've got especially like when we had the EP come out, a couple of years ago now, I suppose it would be, or close to 18 months ago, we were going to do a tour and support the EP on a tour. COVID shot all that down. We never got out of the backyard. So we thought, this time it's an album. Let's make this work, and let's throw in everything that we wanted to do with the EP release and do it on an album tour. So we're currently working out where we can go. And now things are opening up again. Maybe it's in our favour that we'll actually get out there and release the album and do a big tour of it later on in the year.
Is there a name for the new album as yet, Will?
There is. It's being sort of kept under wraps. I'll drop it, sort of The Last Temptation, but you didn't hear me say that.
Okay.
But yeah, and one of the other big things that's happened to the band in the last 12 months is that we signed to American Curtain Call Records. And they've been great with us sort of getting it out there on the international stage with radio stations and promotion and all that sort of thing. And as soon as we can travel, we're hoping to get over and do some stuff with them in the States and beyond, I hope. But they've been great with us. We're in touch with them. try to do it every week, but it's at least every fortnight. We'll have a phone hookup. We'll discuss how the song's going. Do we need to bring something else out? And it's interesting because we've never done that before. I've never done it before with a label. So to have that interaction with someone that's like not only working with and for us, but other bands as well, and you can see how they're doing. So like, okay, well, they're doing really well here, and we're doing really well here. So they're obviously doing something right. It's getting it out there. Like, we never thought the song would do all right. And it's in Mexico City and then a few of the other European countries and all that. So hats off and thank you to Curtain Call Records for taking us on board and keeping us going.
Mate, that all sounds, very, very positive. Black Whiskey, aus.com. That's the place to visit if fans wish to learn more about Black Whiskey. Let's close out by cranking the new single, Down Devil's Highway. Mate, good luck for the rest of the year. Keep flying the flag for rock and roll, and please keep in touch.
Hey, thanks very much for that, and we'll hopefully get to see everybody again down there in the not-too-distant future.